Listen, you probably absolutely are in love with your star employee. They've been with you for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Your patients adore them, and you've trusted them with everything, finances, everything. And then the poison starts. Suddenly, they're questioning every decision, and it starts slow and ramps quick. They're undermining new initiatives. They're spreading negativity like cancer through your team, even if your team is just 3 people. After helping hundreds and hundreds of chiropractors navigate this exact nightmare, I can tell you that the toxic transformation does not happen overnight. It follows a very predictable pattern that you can interrupt and change. You can reverse it as well. If you spot the warning signs early enough, you can do so. So today I'm going to expose the 5-stage toxic timeline that turns great employees into a practice destroyer. You're going to learn exactly when intervention works versus when it's already too late. And I'll share the conversation framework that I teach that either saves the relationship or protects your practice from further damage. This is important. So here's what nobody admits. Your star employee didn't randomly become toxic. You missed the early signals because you were grateful they were handling literally everything, so you just kept giving them more. Now, that gratitude blinded you to their growing resentment. And the first warning sign is what I call ownership overflow. They start saying, my patients instead of our patients, my schedule, my way of doing things. Look for that. I consistently see this pattern 6 to 8 months before full toxicity is completely set in. So picture this scenario destroying practices in your state right now. You have an employee called Sarah, and she's been your rock for 4 years. But lately, she's correcting new staff saying, that's not how we do things here, without consulting you. She's creating her own protocols. So patients ask for Sarah's opinion about treatment. She's not being helpful anymore. She's building a shadow practice inside yours. So here's how you apply this early detection immediately. First, count how many times this week your rock star employee used I or my versus we or our when discussing practice matters. Pay attention to this. More than 60% I language is a significant danger sign. And then second, notice who they're training versus who you ask them to train. If they're creating disciples without your input, you've got a real problem brewing. Third, immediately have a conversation to remind Sarah about her roles, her responsibilities and healthy boundaries. You can say something like, Sarah, I've noticed you taking increased ownership, which I appreciate. Let's just clarify the scope of your authority so we're fully aligned moving forward. Those things are a good start, but ownership challenges often mask something much deeper. So the second warning sign is testing your boundaries. They're not threatening to leave yet, but they're testing what happens if they might. Coming in late to see if you'll say something, making small decisions without asking, contradicting you in front of others. And in my experience analyzing toxic transformations, this phase lasts 3 to 4 months before an absolute explosion. So if you see this warning sign, what should you do? First, document every boundary test, no matter how small. You'll need this pattern evidence later. And then second, address the first test, not the 10th. I noticed you changed the schedule without discussing it. Help me understand your thinking. Why did you do that? Don't attack, investigate professionally. And then third, frame your conversation as genuine concern. You could say, hey, I'm concerned about some changes I'm seeing. You're incredibly valuable to this practice and to me, and I want to discuss this so we stay on the same page, okay? Something like that. And then the third warning sign that predicts toxicity is what I call selective excellence. It's that star staff members, are still amazing at things that give them power, but mysteriously struggling with tasks that don't give them power. So, perfect with favorite patients, sloppy with paperwork, sloppy with patients they don't care for. So, charming with certain staff, cold with others, favoritism. They're not burning out. They're choosing where to shine. It's a decision. And every toxic situation I've mediated showed this pattern. So here's how you apply this detection system now. First, map the person's performance across all their responsibilities. Write it all down. Look for patterns of areas they neglect. And then second, identify what they're protecting versus what they're neglecting. Usually, they excel where they get recognition and fail where they feel undervalued. This is toxic. Third, have a conversation around your consistency. Their consistency. You could say, Sarah, I've noticed your exceptional work with complex patients. here, this person, this person, this person, but you seem to have real challenges with some routine tasks, such as this. What support and help do you need to bring consistency to these areas where you seem to be struggling? Then there's the fourth warning sign nobody catches: secretly building alliances. They covertly build a faction on your team. They take certain team members to lunch. They consult with certain team members instead of others. They start to talk about other team members to others. Having concerned conversations about your leadership. Creating an us versus you dynamic. It just goes on. Obviously, this is extremely toxic and a cause for immediate concern and potentially termination. What should you do if you notice this or hear about it from other staff? Well, first, notice conversation patterns. Do certain staff suddenly go quiet when you approach? Are there new inside jokes you don't understand? Second, identify the recruits. Usually it's newer staff who need belonging or validation, or frustrated staff who are also in need of validation. And then third, remind everyone that all concerns should come to you directly. Unless, of course, you have a true office manager. No background conversations about practice decisions. Make this clear to everyone, not just a toxic employee. And the fifth and final warning is it's sabotage. Small things start breaking. New initiatives mysteriously fail. Patients mention concerns your employees shared. Tasks are not just getting not done, they're getting totally ignored and not addressed. This isn't just toxic, right? These people are destroying. They're destroying your practice. So at this stage, saving them isn't the goal. Protecting your practice is. At this point, it's gone too far. In this alarming scenario, swift action is essential. First, document everything with dates, times, and impacts, which is why we're going over all this. Then you'll need this for appropriate termination. And then second, isolate their access. Remove them from sensitive decisions, patient communications, practice changes, new staff training, new staff hiring. Then have a firm but kind exit conversation. You could say something like, Sarah, the role has evolved beyond what's working for either of us. Let's discuss a transition that protects both your reputation and our practice. Now, here's what makes toxic employees especially dangerous to your practice. They often poison patient relationships around money. They'll sympathize about costs. They'll hint at cheaper alternatives elsewhere, undermining your financial policies. This is beyond toxic. And the practices that survive toxic employees have financial systems that can't be undermined by one person's opinion. And one way to totally protect your practice from toxic transformation as it pertains to financials is to build systems no single employee can destroy. And if you're interested in that, head on over to apexlongevity.com. You'll discover how legal, systematic cash discount programs remove financial conversations from personality-driven interactions, protecting your practice from individual toxicity and helping it move forward. So the truth about toxic stars, they weren't born toxic. They grew toxic in environments that allowed it. Honestly, it's top-down. And your practice either has systems that prevent toxicity or personalities that enable it. Follow this system and protect your practice. Listen, if you enjoyed this content or learned even a single gem, what I'd love for you to do, if you would please leave a kind review and then share this with a colleague who could benefit from the content. Have an amazing day.